today's video, I'm going to tell you guys how to adjust your macros. So let's get started. There are specific circumstances under which you should change your macros, and I'm gonna walk you guys through those circumstances and give you guys practical examples of what that looks like. Hey, what's up YouTube? It's Christine with Gauge Girl Training, an online meal planning and coaching service. I'm a food scientist and chemical engineer by training, and in today's video, I'm going to tell you guys how to adjust your macros. So let's get started. So if you guys are new to the channel, please follow my main account on Instagram, Gauge Girl Training. I also wanted to shout out, look at this busted dirty phone, my new account called GGT_transformations. You can see hundreds of thousands of transformations and success stories, and it's really inspiring because I think a lot of people will find different body types that you can associate with and see yourself in the before photo. So please follow GGT_transformations just for daily inspiration, because we're going to be posting about 2 to 3 transformations per day and new ones as they come about. So check that out. Now, if you are new to the channel, welcome. You will know that I take a macros-based approach to nutrition, and that means we not only calorie count, but we quantify your calories broken down into the macronutrients, which are protein, carbohydrates, and fats. Knowing what your food is made up of and how the body will process that is what I call the macros approach to nutrition. And if at any point in your life you had a specific goal related to weight loss, weight gain, maintenance, you will know that you can't always follow one static set of macros assigned to you by a nutritionist for the rest of your life. And for that reason, there are specific circumstances under which you should change your macros, and I'm gonna walk you guys through those circumstances and give you guys practical examples of what that looks like. So a given set of macronutrients is based off of factors that are constantly changing for some people, and your macros should be adjusted periodically to reassess your current state versus your optimal state. The most common reasons for making adjustments to your macros include, but are not limited to, number 1, you've plateaued. So what does that mean that you have plateaued? It means that you have been truly following your macros 110% to the letter, and you are no longer experiencing changes in your physique as gauged by a result in the change in your measurement. So you've plateaued. Now, when you've plateaued, I'm not talking about you're kind of sort of maybe following your meal plan. You kind of do whatever you feel like, and then you weigh yourself and see no difference. That is not a plateau. That's not focused enough to even be considered a plateau. What I'm talking about is you're following your plan. You're portioning things out. You are going to the gym. You are doing your workouts. You're putting in the work. You are staying on track. And you are gauging progress by a change in your measurements. Not a change in your weight, but by a change in your measurements. For most people, I consider it a plateau if you do not see a change in your waist circumference by about 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch per week, assuming you are in a caloric deficit of 500 calories a week for 1 pound of fat loss per week. If nothing is changing by at least 1/4 inch or more in your waist, and that has happened for more than 3 weeks, talking 3 weeks, then I would say you are in a plateau. If that is the case, yes, you need a macronutrient adjustment. The next circumstance that you need a macronutrient adjustment is pregnancy. Once you find out you are expecting, your nutrition requirements will change, but it's not as drastic as you think. And there's a specific macronutrient split that I recommend for pregnant women, and we'll go into that in a little bit more detail. But this is not the time to be in a caloric deficit if you are pregnant. If you find that you are newly pregnant, not the time to be in a caloric deficit. You want to be at maintenance. We'll talk about that shortly. The next circumstance under which you want to make a change to your macros is breastfeeding. Now, for those who choose to nurse their children and you are trying to drop body fat at the same time, there are 2 specific sets of criteria you guys want to follow, and it's going to support minimizing the loss of vital nutrients and macros lost via lactation. I will talk about that in a moment. The next circumstance under which you need to change your macros is a change in your activity. When your macros are calculated, you are given a total daily energy expenditure value before you come up with what you're going to be consuming. Now, if you have recently started working out more frequently, more rigorously, or if you've had stopped working out or slowed down working out, if you've been injured, you just have a lack of time, you do need to make adjustments to your protocol because you need to make sure that your macronutrients are going to follow in line with these changing energy requirements. Number five reason to change your macros is you want a change in your rate of progress. So what this means, let's say we've calculated your macros for you, and you may be finding that what you thought you wanted is either way too challenging or it is way too easy. And either one of those points in the spectrum may dictate a need and a reason to change your progress. Let's say you said, you know what, I want to lose this weight, I want to get to it, whatever it takes, right? But then you get on a whatever it takes style meal plan and you're like, okay, this is too hard. I'm probably going to end up creating healthy habits if I proceed this way. I probably need to dial it back. Perfectly fine. And likewise, you may be like, you know what, I was going about this a little bit more conservatively, and you know what, I can handle this, I got this, I actually want to dial it up, I actually want to get fitter a little bit faster, I can handle it, I'm feeling good, I'm in a good place mentally, I'm ready. Those are 2 circumstances where if you want a change in your progress rate, you should change your macros. And last but not least, number 6, you have reached your goal. Congratulations. If you have reached your goal, now what? Now what do you do? Nobody talks about what do you do after you reach your goal, because I feel like there's a lot of people that are just literally serial dieters. They just are on this kick, but you don't have to diet for your whole life. What do you do when you've reached your goal? So you've been following your macros, you've reached your goal, you're not intended to live in a caloric deficit forever, you need to make a macronutrient adjustment to maintenance, and we're going to talk about that. All right, so back through the list of 6 items, we're going back to line item number 1, which is you have plateaued. What do you do when you've plateaued? So if you have been following, again, your program for about 30 days or more, or at least a solid 3 weeks, and you are in a true plateau, as I described in the beginning of this video, this is what you need to do. So like I said, if you are losing approximately 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 of an inch off of your waist per week, you are dropping body fat at about the fastest sustainable rate there is possible, with a few exceptions. One exception would be if you have a substantial amount of weight to lose, like over 100 pounds, you will lose more than 1/2 of an inch off of your waist in a week if you're in a deficit. As well as there's an exception where some people may have a shorter torso, and as a result of that, if you have a shorter torso and have a more square-like appearance to your body without a natural hourglass style shape, you may not be experiencing that change. But all that being said, if you are in a plateau, the first thing I recommend is to optimize your meal timing. Don't go about switching your macros just yet. You want to optimize your meal timing. A couple common things that people mess up on in this circumstance is to make sure that you're not weight training on an empty stomach. Make sure you have at least 15 grams of carbs before your workout minimum. If you are weight training in the morning, make sure your cardio is after your weight session. You want your cardio to be second because you want to have the highest amount of glycogen to support powerful lifts. You want your glycogen to be depleted by the time you do your cardio, so that way your cardio can contribute more towards fat loss, because the first 20-25 minutes of cardio is going to be fueled off of glycogen and not really body fat. So that's definitely something you want to optimize right then and there. You can introduce fasted cardio. There's nothing wrong with that, but always make sure you are eating before you are weight training. I had a client who was in a 4-week plateau who was doing fasted weight training. Once we shifted her carbs around and optimized her carbs around her training session, she broke out of the plateau without increasing her calories. That's one thing that you could do. Another thing that you can do is you could introduce an intermittent fasting style protocol if you are not seeing progress. The last thing I want to do is cut somebody's macros. The last thing I want to do is take away food from anybody. But all that being said, intermittent fasting is excellent at breaking plateaus. For those of you who are trying intermittent fasting, I don't recommend it until you need to break through a plateau. Don't just do it just because. I recommend using it as like an extra tool for when you need a boost. The premise of intermittent fasting is you have shortened feeding windows, longer fasting windows. This will boost your progress because it allows your body to burn fat longer because you're having fewer insulin spikes. The pancreas, which releases insulin, is doing work over a longer period of time if you are just eating from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed, even if you're in a caloric deficit. However, giving your body a break and giving your pancreas a break from shuttling and managing insulin, it allows the pancreas to release another hormone called glucagon. Glucagon is the fat burning hormone. It gives it more residence time to do its job. So shifting your meal timing, introducing something like a 16-8 intermittent fast is a great idea. You can start off with just doing it only 3 days a week. You don't need to do it every single day of the week to see a benefit, but that is definitely one thing you should try if you are in a plateau. So another thing is ensuring that you're getting your post-workout meal about 30 minutes after your workout. It is ideal to support that anabolic window, but the thing is, there are some people who take post-workout shakes after cardio sessions. Now, unless your cardio session is substantially longer than 30 to 45 minutes, you really didn't burn that much to really constitute the need to refuel. I think supplement companies will push you and make you think that you need a shake for everything and every reason, but you actually don't. Unless you're Michael Phelps and like burning tons and tons and tons of calories, you probably don't need to replenish to that level. So just make sure that you're not taking like all these extra shakes when you really don't need to. So if you're in a plateau and you want to make a carb adjustment, so one thing you can do is reduce your carbohydrates. If you're starting a macro-based program, I always recommend a conservative approach and use conservative estimates of activity level and activity factors when you are determining your macronutrients. So even if you know you can handle eating less, eat as high as possible as you can, so that way if you get to the point metabolically where you stall out, you can drop it down. So let's say your macros turn out to be 1750 calories, but you know mentally you could handle under 1500, but your calculations are saying 1750. Eat the 1750, because if you can make steady progress at 1750 calories, you want to make progress at the highest calorie level possible, so that way when you do plateau, and let's say we drop 50 calories or we drop 100 calories, you're only at 1650 as opposed to being much lower. You want to keep your body as fueled as humanly possible. So at that point, I recommend a 10% carb reduction that you would reevaluate and reassess your progress in 7 to 10 days after that. There is a time when you actually need to increase your carbohydrates if you've plateaued. What? Yes. Sometimes you need to increase your carbs. It's not always about dropping your carbs. If we find that this is typically for those who have been under eating. When I say under eating, you're not consuming enough, your total daily energy expenditure is pretty high, your caloric deficit is really low, and you may be one of those people who tend to be overly ambitious with your diets, with your exercise. I used to be this way, trust me, I get it. And what's going to happen is if you are under eating and you are in a deficit, you might be one of those people that's like, I'm doing everything, I'm working out, I'm doing this, nothing's happening, you're not eating enough. So if you find that the recommended calories when you redo the math and calculations for you based off of your activity level, minus a deficit, is higher than what you're eating, you need to boost your calories. This is times when you want to take a refeed day, where you would take your carbohydrates, multiply it by 1.4x of your current carbohydrates at where you need to be, because this will boost your leptin levels. Your leptin levels will tell your body that it is no longer starving. It will tell your body that it is okay to release stored body fat. So watch my other video on refeed macros to understand this in more depth. Now, if you find that you are ready to recalculate your macros based off of the higher level of activity that you are actually doing, what I would recommend is increasing your carbohydrates by 10 to 20% per week. for a total of 1 to 2 weeks. And under these circumstances, your progress should continue. And you'd be surprised. Sometimes it takes maybe 2 to 3 weeks, but I have seen tons of clients, and it's not just ectomorphs, bodies respond as a result of bringing up the carbs. So there is a time to do that, and it's most likely if you are overtraining. So you really need to be mindful of what your total calorie level is. The next thing, if you've plateaued, you want to make some adjustments to your fat content. I advise not making too many changes to all of your macros at once. And instead of trying to change too many things, I recommend evaluating single variables at a time just to see how things are going. So unless you are working under the guidance of a coach or somebody who is able to make multiple adjustments for you, I don't recommend you trying to do a million different things all at once. And I know I'm talking to somebody because you guys know who you are. It is advised to take it one thing at a time if you are going about this on your own. However, given these prerequisites, it is advised to drop fat content as a secondary knob as opposed to the primary knob when it comes to making fine-tune adjustments. So again, before you drop fat, tweak the carbs first, unless you are having a hormonal issue. As a result of that, you will most likely see added progress as a result of the carbohydrate adjustments for another few more weeks and or months. But when you evaluate your fat content, you don't want to change it any more than 5 to 10% at a time. And I advise you do that in, just smaller increments. I mean, that really roughly translates into maybe like 5 grams in a week. And this is assuming that you were conservative with your initial estimate of your total daily energy expenditure. So I am not recommending that you continue to take your fat to crazy levels. I have worked with somebody in the past whose coach put them on 20 to 25 grams of fat in a day, and it was just ridiculous. You definitely don't want to do that. You're going to just stifle yourself on all kinds of levels. So the next adjustment you would want to do if you are in a plateau, which is just like I just said, increasing fat. If you have gone too low in fat for too long, it will negatively impact hormonal function, and then everything's out the window. Do not push yourself to this place, guys. I am telling you, do not push yourself, especially women. Do not do this. Whatever competition, whatever physique goal you think you have in your mind, do not push yourself to these dangerous limits. So what I would say for women, I don't recommend going any lower than 35 grams, period. And for men, no lower than 45 to 50 grams. Now, it is rare that people will go to these extremes other than if you are doing something for bodybuilding competitions. So under that caveat, just note that they should not be followed for your entire prep. They should be for very short periods of time with the goal of making sure that you're going to reverse out of those circumstances. So if you are not consuming enough fat, this is what that looks like. You may find that you are constantly fatigued. You have a reduced libido. You may be mentally fatigued. Your brain needs calories and your brain needs fat to function. About 20 to 25% of our BMR goes to brain function. If you're having a hard time regulating your body temperature, this is a symptom common to those who are anorexics. If you are feeling constantly cold, it is time to increase your fat intake. And it is advised that you increase your fat intake by about 10 to 20% of where you're at for 7 days at a time to make sure that you are feeling better, measuring your improvements by things of how you feel, improved mental clarity, regained libido, increased energy, overall satiety. And this also improves the body's ability to absorb fat-soluble vitamins. So you definitely don't want to go too low on that, and those are the reasons why. All right, so pregnancy. How do you adjust your macros during pregnancy? Regardless of your current body fat percentage, pregnancy is not the time to focus on vanity weight. And the nutritional requirements for an expecting mother are completely different compared to a woman who is just seeking to lose weight. And pregnancy is one of the most uniquely intense circumstances a woman will ever experience in her life. This is not the time to be doing anything crazy, any kind of crazy crash dieting, anything like that. It's not the time. However, there are some specific things you need to know about how to handle your macros when you are pregnant. So when it comes to pregnancy, if you are an underweight female, a healthy female, or an overweight. So if you are underweight, you can expect to gain 30 to 40 pounds in a pregnancy. If you are healthy, the expected weight gain is 25 to 35 pounds. And if you are overweight, the expectation is you only gain 15 to 20 pounds. So the recommended standard is to gain no more than 5 pounds in the first trimester and approximately 1 pound a week until delivery, or approximately 21 more weeks. So again, let me put that on here. The rule of thumb is you don't want to gain any more than 5 pounds in the first trimester and then at 1 pound a week for 21 more weeks until delivery. So how do you calculate your pregnancy macros? So here's what you want to do. Number one, calculate your maintenance macros. How do you calculate maintenance macros? You follow my YouTube video on how to determine your BMR plus your activity factor. That's your total daily energy expenditure. Your total daily energy expenditure is your maintenance macros. See this video here for how to do that. Once you have your maintenance macros, this is what you do. So the next thing is you add 300 calories to that value. 300 calories is all you need. Add 300 calories. So now, if you are underweight, you make that plus 500. But for most people, it's going to be 300 calories. Last but not least, these are the macronutrient ratios I recommend for a pregnant woman. Protein. I recommend 0.8 grams of protein per pound body weight. For your fat, I recommend 0.5 grams of fat per pound body weight. And carbs is the balance of the two. That is what you do for pregnancy. Now, I have more detailed calculations of how to go about this by trimester, but it's such a very detailed, specific thing. If you need help and guidance on this, please note I am not a medical doctor, but I am a nutritionist. I am a food scientist. I can walk you through these things and give you my recommendations through a consultation. But these are the general rules of thumb. It can vary if you are overweight. It can vary if you are underweight. But this is the framework with which you want to set it up. Next circumstance with which you want to adjust your macros is if you are breastfeeding. So what you want to do if you are breastfeeding is you want to obviously determine your maintenance macros. From your maintenance macros, if you want to be in a caloric deficit, apply a caloric deficit. Or if you want to just maintain, stay at maintenance macros. However, here is the trick for breastfeeding. It's going to depend on how much breast milk you produce in a day. So let's say the average female lactates 24 ounces of breast milk in a day. You need to calculate the macros in 1 ounce of breast milk and replenish for every ounce you lactate. So for instance, in 1 ounce of breast milk, we have 22 calories, 0.3 grams of protein, 1.3 grams of fat, and 2.1 grams of carbs. So that is the breakdown of what's coming out in 1 ounce of breast milk. So if you are excreting 24 ounces of breast milk per day, lactating, my apologies, 24 ounces of breast milk is 528 calories, 6.6 grams of protein, 31.2 fat, and 50.4 carbs. So you want to back add the breast milk macros into whatever macros you calculate for yourself based off of what you are lactating. So the trick here is it's not a matter of just boosting the calories. You want to boost it proportional to what is being removed from your body. So a breastfeeding mother is going to have higher fats and higher carbs at the same time, but it's going to be okay as long as you are dialed in. I have had breastfeeding mothers consuming between 2,500 and 3,000 calories a day while still losing body fat, still losing weight, still feeling good. And that is the logic and rationale with which you would go about doing that. If you have a change in your activity factor, so number 4 is a change of activity, that is another circumstance which you want to adjust your macros. If you are finding that your total daily energy expenditure minus your BMR, that is the total amount of calories you need to burn in a day. If you are over that, you need to dial it back in. A lot of people get this wrong. I see this. This is the number one biggest mistake. in people calculating their own macros is they overestimate their activity and then they're not losing weight and they don't know why. It's because you think you're burning more calories than you are, and for the love of God, those Fitbit calculators, they're great for like monitoring steps. For calories burned, I've found that they drastically overestimate calories burned. So you want to just take more fundamental calculations to your calories burned. Look about how much you're training and whatnot. If you're not sure, I can help you, walk you through that calculation. But if you are not burning enough calories in the day, you need to be realistic about how much you actually are burning in a day. If you're working out only 3 times a week, maybe 4 tops, and you're sedentary during the day, I wouldn't give you an activity factor of much more than like a 1.375 or like a 1.4. I wouldn't even give you a 1.4. I'd probably give you like a 1.35 or 1.375. Like, you're not burning a whole lot. Likewise, if you are burning too much, you definitely just need to redial in your macros. The second to the last thing is a change in your progress rate. You'll be setting up your macros based off of a goal that is too aggressive for you. If you find yourself that you just can't train as frequently as you thought you could, you're gonna have to eat more. You're gonna have to go a little bit slower, and that's okay, guys. Don't give up just because it feels slow. Go about it at a rate that you feel comfortable with. But here's a twist, because I have been working with thousands of people for years, I know how you guys get, where you want the progress, but you don't want to put in the work, but you get mad when you don't see any changes. Well, guys, something's got to give. Like, if you want to see those steady number changes, you're going to have to put in a lot of work. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with going a little bit more aggressive. I've been there, I've done that. There are times for it. But if it's harder than you want, you may be more likely to fall off track and binge. And lack of progress isn't always the result of your macros not working. Sometimes it is your body doing too much. Sometimes your body needs time to adjust. Sometimes you need to set an awareness that this is going to be the beginning of a much longer lifestyle journey, and it is okay to go about things in a slower rate. And it's counterintuitive to think that if we live in this world like of instant gratification, to say, you know what, I just go about it nice and easy, you'll get there. Like, nobody wants to hear that. That's why people want these types of programs. They want to get from point A to point B. So if you dial in your macros and set your goals and follow through, results are inevitable. So these are questions that only you can answer as your coach, as your nutritionist. I can't answer those for you. I can guide you, and I can say, if you do this, this is what this is going to be like. If you do this, this is what this is going to be like. But there are also times where if you want to dial it up, dial it up. But please note that pursuing goals that are too aggressive can actually be a bad thing at times, and it might be good to dial it back. By dialing it back, it means eating more, working out a little bit less, and sticking to something that you can follow through for months and months and months, as opposed to just a set number of days. All right, so last but not least, you've reached your goal. Now what do? You reverse diet. How do you reverse diet? I recommend you take a period of time of 4 to 8 weeks. I recommend you calculate your maintenance macros. From your maintenance macros to your caloric deficit macros, that gap of time, giving yourself 4 to 8 weeks, 8 weeks is even better. The difference in the macros between those two, divide that by 8 and increase it steadily each week. So you're going to see increases in carbs, you're going to see increases in fat. If you don't allow yourself time to reverse diet, what's going to happen is you're going to gain weight too fast. Your metabolism is not going to be able to catch up, and you're going to have an unflattering effect where all the extra food is actually bloating you and not being utilized to build muscle and to keep your metabolism high the way it's intended to. So be careful with that. This is where the concept of flexible dieting is excellent, and I highly recommend. But if you need a customized reverse dieting strategy, or you're not sure how to go about calculating what that looks like for you, you can always get a consultation. So I hope this helped you guys. If you have any questions, comment below. See you in the next one.